Hi everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Dan Pardo, and this is Pardo's Turn, my weekly Wednesday web series where I analyze a classic show tune from a music director's point of view, and with the help of a special guest, perhaps shed some light on what makes the gems of our musical theater canon so great. Today I am so happy to welcome on the funny and friendly Kirsten Wyatt, one of my favorite theatrical comediennes. She was seen on Broadway in Annie, You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, Urinetown, Shrek, Elf, A Christmas Story, High Fidelity, and Grease. She's also been on several national tours and starred in countless regional productions, including Gertrude McFuzz in Seussical at the Muni, Agnes Gooch in Mame at Goodspeed, and several Adelaides in Guys and Dolls. To kick off yet another trip to Runyon in a production that will be announced quite soon, we're going to perform Adelaide's Lament, arguably the best character piece of all time. There are two contrasting sections to the song, a sort of recitative that takes place as Adelaide is reading her medical textbook, and then a more jazz-inflected commentary. Both are brilliantly constructed with clear compositional choices and a unique musical vocabulary. The Lament starts out with a spoken cue line, "It says here," which makes it clear that the following lyric is directly from the book. Formal, technical, and with the most basic of rhyme schemes. Musically, the melody sits lower in Adelaide's range, and the tempo is slow and deliberate, with the straight rhythms a little stilted for the words that they're setting. It's a bit of a reach for Adelaide, but then we hear those three bell chimes, bum, 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 and she begins to put the pieces together. Frank Loesser wisely clues us into this shift with his structural lyric, "In other words," which effectively sets up the B section to make a very different statement. This section begins to move a little, begins to swing a little. It sits a little higher in her voice and employs a broader assortment of songwriting techniques, including a triple rhyme scheme, internal rhymes, and an overall greater sense of wit. If she's starting to make a name for herself, but the name ain't his, how freaking good is that? That last lyric is actually from the end of the second verse, whose A-B form is much like the first. Rather than going to a third verse, though, the second B section goes directly to another B section, on the heels of a fun half-step modulation. In other words, she doesn't have to keep reading to find the answer. She's got the picture and she's rolling with it. This last B section does break form a little, though. The tempo map gets interrupted with some more recitative moments, and there is a fun extension that builds to the end. It's a near-perfect song in a near-perfect show, and there isn't really much more to say. Enjoy. Hi Kirsten, how are you?
I'm good. Hi Dan.
Thanks so much for joining me. I've wanted you on this show for a while now. We've had two chances to work together, both at Goodspeed, two of your three shows there. And you have such a great energy and a presence. I've just learned so much about being, not firsthand being a comedian, but about these types of character roles. What's your approach to doing these character roles? Because you've done quite a few. You've done Frenchie, you've done multiple Adelaides, you were the understudy for Sally and Lucy on Broadway, and that was one of your first, was that your first Broadway show?
It was.
So tell me a little bit about your process.
I think what I focus on most is like the kernel of truth at the center of the characters I play, whatever that might be. And I sort of expand out from there, but I really always try to start with what I know to be true, what I resonate with. Oftentimes I end up playing characters that have a pretty big heart, and I think I have a pretty big heart, so it's usually sometimes somewhere to, it's a place that grounds me so that the comedy never gets too over the top or just comedy for comedy's sake. It always comes out of the truth of the situation or the story that we're telling. That's my goal.
When you're playing a character like that the audience really feeds on, and vice versa, are you influenced by audience responses, or do you kind of play your show?
Are you asking me if I'm a laugh whore, Dan? Because I am. That's my favorite thing about theater, is that there is this energy exchange, and I find it you know, the little bit of television that I've done, it's really hard because you don't have that positive reinforcement, for lack of a better term, unless you make the crew laugh, which I find like it's a badge of honor.
Especially because those union types are like probably so stoic the entire time.
Well, they have a job to do, you know.
That's true.
They can't laugh if they're behind the camera because, you know, you ruin the shot.
I say this as if I've ever done any TV work whatsoever. I have no idea.
But yeah, I definitely love making people laugh. It's like my favorite thing. I feel like we all have things we can contribute to the world, and if I can contribute just a little bit of laughter to the world and joy, then I feel like I've had a good life.
Let's talk about Adelaide as a character.
Sure.
You're approaching her for a third time, which is great, because I feel like one of the, not the trap to Adelaide, but in terms of when the role is cast, especially since it's a show that is done regionally and in amateur groups so often, it's usually cast like way too young. So, and that's not to have any commentary of you're playing it now, but it's a type of character that I feel gets more effective and that has more truth to it the more mature the character gets, because then there's so much more at stake in terms of the marriage.
Well, even if you just, you know, textually in the script, they've been engaged for 14 years. So you can't have someone who's 25 playing Adelaide, because that's weird and illegal. But you know what I mean? Like, you have to have a woman who's there who could conceivably be engaged for 14 years, you know? And I do think it is a specific situation. It's not a problem, but a specific situation that a woman of a certain age faces because your biological clock is ticking. Yeah. You know,
there's some real stakes there.
Absolutely. She wants to get on with her life. She wants to have a family. She wants to settle down. She wants to, like, adult. She's ready to be, like, an adult, and she hasn't been able to because Nathan won't say yes.
Right. And on the flip side, it makes the comedy of, like, Bushel and Peck that much funnier when this, like, slightly over-the-hill person is trying to do this burlesque routine, you know?
Yes, I agree. It says here, the average unmarried female, basically insecure, due to some long frustration, may react with psychosomatic symptoms, difficult to endure, affecting the upper respiratory tract. In other words, just from waiting around for that plain little band of gold, a person can develop a cold. You can spray it wherever you figure the streptococci lurk. You can give her a shot for whatever she's got, but it just won't work. If she's tired of getting the fisheye from the hotel clerk, a person can develop a cold. It says here, the female remaining single, just in a legal sense, shows a neurotic tendency. See note, chronic organic syndromes, toxic or hypertense, involving the eye, the ear, and the nose, and throat. In other words, just from worrying whether the wedding is on or off, a person can develop a cough. You can feed her all day with the vitamin A and the bromophies, but the medicine never gets anywhere near where the trouble is. If she's starting to get a name for herself, and the name is, a person can develop a cough. And furthermore, just from stalling the wedding trip, a person can develop a grip. When they get on the train to Niagara, and she can hear church bells chime, the compartment is air conditioned, and the mood is sublime. Then sneezes and a sinus that's really a pip. From a lack of community property and a feeling she's getting too old, a person can develop a
played Frenchie on Broadway, and that was a role that you originated on Broadway, or at least
well,
in
not
the
original. Dan, Jesus, how old do you think I am?
But in that you were in a replacement. So,
yes, I know.
So, what was that like?
First of all, it was a really joyful process because that show we had 14 people making their Broadway debuts.
Oh wow!
This is the 2007 revival with Laura Osnes and Max Crum. There was a television show and. It was a really special time. You know, getting to originate a role on Broadway is a thrill. You know, you get to put your stamp on it. It's like, that's mine. You know, I've gotten to do it a couple of times, and there really is nothing like it.
So that was obviously a highly anticipated production because there was the TV show attached to it, but you've also come to roles more organically or more typically in terms of a Broadway trajectory. In a certain case, you've been doing a show, Born for This. I want to make sure I get the title right.
Yeah.
Which you've been developing regionally for the last couple of years. Tell me a little bit about the piece and maybe its future.
Yeah, so Born for This is the story of BB and CeCe Winans, who are Grammy award-winning gospel singers. Look them up if you don't know them. They're incredible. And this is their journey from Detroit. They grew up in Detroit. And when they were teenagers, they appeared on the Praise the Lord Network with Jim and Tammy Faye Baker. And they were televangelists in the 1980s. They went on, you know, on the TV and were like, praise the Lord, and if you love us and you want this to keep going, give us your money. And they got some pretty, you know, bad press, maybe. But their hearts were really good, and they were some of the first people to integrate Christian television, and that was really important. And basically what the show is about is how you find family in the least expected places, and what is family. It's a great show. So we've done it all over. We've done it at the Arena Stage in DC, we did it in LA, we've done it in Boston, and we're hoping to get to the Broadway.
You were talking before about how the characters that you play, you kind of find both the kernel of truth and lead with your heart. And I think it's so important to play a character who has some baggage or whatever that how you interpret that.
She absolutely does.
You know, because you have to find the person within and find what they were about.
Absolutely, and I think when you start with your heart, no matter who you're playing on stage or acting, for a camera or whatever, that's the difference between acting and becoming a caricature.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like a cartoon of somebody, which when you have someone like Tammy, it's easy to do. And my goal is to not do that. It's a work in progress, man. Like, we are always learning. I am expanding. I am trying. I still take class. I still take voice lessons. I take acting class every week. And it's like...
Is this for like the same studio that you participate in? Or?
I have an amazing teacher, and I've been with her for like 4 years. There came a point where I think, I've been here for 20 years. Yeah. And I have this career, and I'm proud of it. But there came a point where I was like, I think I can do more. Like, I want to keep growing, keep expanding my artist vocabulary, and I'm at a point where I don't know how to do that by myself anymore, and I need to go to a place where I can take risks and have no consequences.
Yeah, and I think it's important for younger actors to realize that even the best among the best still are taking the classes and putting the work forward. 2 of your Broadway credits were Christmas shows, Elf and Christmas Story. Are you a Christmas person? Do you like Christmas?
I love Christmas.
Okay, good.
I love it. It's my favorite time. My house gets very decorated. My husband is always like, do we need, why all of these boxes? I was like, those are the Christmas decorations, and they need to be accessible to me. We always get a real tree. My grandfather owned a Christmas tree farm. Oh, cool. So, as an homage to him. Is that also
in West Virginia? Or?
Yes, Clarksburg, West Virginia. But I love Christmas, and I'm happy to celebrate it on Broadway, off Broadway. whatever.
Oh, so like me, you have ventured into web series, also with Broadway people, but it has a culinary focus.
Correct. It's
right?
called Broadway Nosh, and it is a cooking show. And I cook with my favorite Broadway stars. And here's the thing, like, I'm a fine cook. I'm not like the best cook in the world, but I think food brings people together, and that's what I love. In the same way that theater brings people together, right? It's a very visceral experience. It should be experienced now with each other in the present moment, and that's what I like about food and cooking. I also love to feed my casts and the companies of the shows that I'm in. It's one of my favorite things to do. They're my guinea pigs, and I'm like, here, try this. And I know if there's some left in the pan, I won't make the recipe again.
Well, this was such a treat. If you like this episode, give us a big thumbs up, comment, subscribe, share, like Broadway Nosh, and we'll see you next week. Pardo's turn.
From a lack of community,